Yeah.
Claude asks, I was talking with a Sunday school member last Sunday about the trucking business. He said business was way down and drivers are being laid off or hours are just cut back. Also, deliveries to the military are also almost non-existent. Is this the general trend or is it just a local trend? Is this a reliable forward indicator?
Let me just say this first, Claude. The trucking industry is absolutely vital to the American economy, and I do think, it's a great employment opportunity. Many of the CEOs, and Dan talked about this in a separate instance back in 2021, there are a lot of Christian CEOs in the trucking industry. And so we at the ministry think very, very highly of the trucking industry. It's a backbone of the American economy. It provides good jobs. For your question, and once again, I'd love to open up the opportunity for our truckers to weigh in now on this if you are listening, or if you have family members who are truckers. My understanding is that this trend that you asked is happening and that this is general throughout the country and it's continuing. It started back in 2021. So it took a hit in the last really 3 years. This new development that you mentioned, I think, is kind of the result of that. It's kind of the end result of the industry getting attacked in those different ways. So it started in 2020 and 2021, in part due to the COVID lockdowns. The trucking industry became overworked. Because there was a need for that because everything was shut down. But the trucking industry is one of those things that wasn't. So this resulted in a big number of quits back then. Dan talked frequently about this on the show. He mentioned that 80,000 trucker shortage that was back in 2021. A few reasons for this happened, in my opinion, Claude. Number one, overworked truckers, as we said, and that impact has not slowed down. Because of that, there's another reason as well, supply chain issues. During the last 3.5 years, truckers' hours have increased. You heard that caller mention, when you're waiting an hour or 2 or 3 or more for loads and unloads because of supply chain issues, that is time wasted. That's time wasted on the job. Not only is it time wasted on the job, that eats into your workday, and now you have to be on the job at work for 2, 3, 4 hours more in a day than you normally would. So you heard what he had mentioned. I think he mentioned somewhere around 12, 13-hour days. You can imagine how drivers get overworked. They're already working a job that pulls them away from their families. They have to drive in a car for a long time. That gets tiring after a while. There's another thing that's happening here, though, that is important too, and that's an aging out of a lot of truckers. So truck driving is a great way to make an income, but it's not a glamorous job, right? It's not going to be, you're not going to be a social media influencer. You're not a professional athlete. It's not a glamorous job. It's a great job. But I believe there are a lot of young men entering the workforce who are looking for a glamorous job. And so they will see truck driver and they'll say, I don't want to do that. So many of the men who saw truck driving as a good opportunity, they're aging out. They're getting near retirement. A good portion of the trucking industry is older men, and so a lot of them are aging out as well. All of this, Claude, I think can be exacerbated here by an increase in inflation. I think that's a huge, huge part of this. Higher cost of goods being transported could mean higher cost to transport those goods. And of course, we got to consider higher gas prices as well. If these trucking companies have to cost more to maintain their vehicles, they can't pay their employees as much. These CEOs have to figure out a way to keep their businesses going. And sometimes staff cuts is what happens. Sometimes income cuts is what happens. All of that exacerbated with the quits that we've seen can really put strain on an industry. And I think we've seen that with the trucking business, unfortunately.